They say money can't buy happiness, but it can sure as hell buy you the power to expose a cheating husband and protect everything you've worked for. My name is Zuri, and this is the story of how $1 million inheritance became the weapon I never knew I needed. You think you know someone after 10 years of marriage? Think again. Because the man I trusted with my heart, my home, and my future was planning to take it all and run. But here's the thing about underestimating a strong Black woman with newfound wealth and a burning desire for justice. We don't just get mad, we get even. If you're ready for a story that'll have you on the edge of your seat, questioning everything you thought you knew about love, betrayal, and the sweet taste of revenge, then buckle up. But first, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you're going to want to follow this journey to the very end. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before everything changed. My name is Zuri Williams, and for the past 8 years, I'd been living what I thought was a decent life in suburban Atlanta. I'm a 34-year-old marketing coordinator, mother to my beautiful 7-year-old son Caleb, and wife to Marcus Williams, a man I thought I'd grow old with. Marcus and I met in college. He was charming, ambitious, studying business while I pursued my marketing degree. We had that young love, you know? The kind that makes you believe in forever. We got married right after graduation, bought our first home together, and when Caleb came along, I thought our little family was complete. But somewhere between the mortgage payments, work stress, and the daily grind of marriage, we started drifting apart. Marcus became distant, always working late, always on his phone. I tried to reconnect. Date nights, couples therapy suggestions, romantic gestures, but he seemed elsewhere. Distracted. Like he was going through the motions of being a husband. For months, I blamed myself. Was I not attractive enough anymore? Not interesting enough? Had motherhood changed me so much that I'd lost the woman he fell in love with? I was starting to believe that maybe our marriage was just another casualty of time and complacency. Then, 3 months ago, my father passed away. My daddy was a self-made man. Started with nothing and built a small, but successful construction company from the ground up. He was old school, tough love, high expectations, but fiercely protective of his family. When the lawyer called me into his office for the reading of the will, I expected maybe a few $1,000s and some sentimental items. What I got instead changed everything. $1.2 million. That's what my father left me. His life insurance, savings, and the proceeds from selling his business. The lawyer explained that my father had been planning this for years, ensuring his daughter would never have to depend on anyone for financial security. I remember sitting in that leather chair, staring at the papers, tears streaming down my face. Not just from grief, but from a profound sense of possibility. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Like I had options. Like I had power. I drove home that day with a renewed sense of hope. Maybe this inheritance could be the fresh start Marcus and I needed. Maybe we could pay off our debts, take that vacation we'd been talking about for years, invest in our future. Maybe money really could solve our problems. God, I was so naive. When I walked through our front door that evening, Marcus was in the living room, playing video games while Caleb did his homework at the kitchen table. Normal. Routine. Mundane. Hey baby, I called out, trying to contain my excitement. We need to talk. I have some incredible news. Marcus barely looked up from his screen. Can it wait? I'm in the middle of a raid. That should have been my first red flag, but I was too caught up in my own emotions to notice his indifference. I waited until after Caleb went to bed, then sat Marcus down and told him everything. The inheritance, the amount, the opportunities it could create for our family. His reaction was strange. He seemed shocked, then almost immediately started talking about what we could do with the money. New cars, a bigger house, investments. But something in his eyes didn't match his words. It was like he was calculating something, working through some internal equation I wasn't privy to. This is amazing, Zoo, he said, using the nickname he hadn't called me in months. This could change everything for us. I agreed, feeling hopeful for the first time in our marriage in ages. We spent the next few hours talking about our dreams, our plans, our future. It felt like the old Marcus was back, attentive, engaged, loving. I went to bed that night thinking maybe my father's final gift wasn't just money, but the chance to save my marriage. For the next 2 weeks, things seemed to improve between us. Marcus was more affectionate, more present. He started talking about us again instead of just going through his daily routine. I started making plans, not just for the money, but for our relationship. I researched couples retreats, planned a surprise weekend getaway, even bought some new lingerie, thinking maybe we could rekindle that physical connection we'd lost. But then, on a rainy Tuesday evening in October, my world came crashing down. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Marcus walked in with an expression I'd never seen before. Serious. Determined. Almost cold. "Zuri, we need to talk," he said, and something in his tone made my stomach drop. I turned off the stove and faced him, my heart already starting to race. "What's wrong?" Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I'd noticed over the years. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About us. About our marriage. About what we both want from life. I want a divorce." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually stepped backward, gripping the counter for support. "What?" "Marcus, what are you talking about? Things have been going so well lately. We've been connecting again, making plans." He shook his head. "That's just it, Zoo. I've been pretending. We both have. We've grown apart, and I don't think we can fix this. I think we want different things from life now. But the inheritance, all our plans, our family. The money doesn't change the fundamental problems in our relationship," he said, and there was something almost rehearsed about his response. "If anything, it's made me realize that I need to be honest about how I feel. I can't keep pretending to be happy when I'm not." I stared at him, searching his face for any hint of the man I'd married, the father of my child, the person I'd shared my life with for nearly a decade. What I saw instead was a stranger. Someone who had made up his mind and was just going through the motions of breaking my heart. "So that's it?" I whispered. 8 years of marriage and you're just done?" "I think it's best for both of us," he said. "We can work out the details amicably. Split everything fairly. Co-parent Caleb. Maybe we'll both be happier apart." The way he said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact, made me realize this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was something he'd been thinking about, planning for. The question was, for how long? That night, after Marcus went to bed in the guest room, a boundary that had apparently already been established in his mind, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The timing seemed too convenient. The inheritance, then this sudden rekindling of affection, then this abrupt announcement of wanting a divorce. Something wasn't adding up. And if there's one thing my daddy taught me, it's that when something doesn't add up, you better start doing your own math. Little did I know, I was about to become a detective in my own life story. And what I discovered would make that divorce conversation look like child's play. The next few days were a blur of fake normalcy. Marcus acted like nothing had changed. He still went to work, still came home for dinner, still played with Caleb like he was father of the year. But there was a wall between us now, an invisible barrier that made every interaction feel forced and awkward. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our conversation, looking for clues I might have missed. The way he'd talked about the money. The way he'd seemed so prepared for my emotional reaction. The way he'd mentioned splitting everything fairly. On Friday evening, Marcus announced he was going out with his coworkers for drinks. Nothing unusual about that. He'd done it plenty of times before. But something made me pay attention this time. Maybe it was the way he checked his appearance in the mirror before leaving. Maybe it was the cologne, a new scent I didn't recognize. Maybe it was just my newly awakened suspicion. Whatever it was, I decided to follow my instincts. After he left, I found myself doing something I'd never done in 8 years of marriage. I went through his things. I started with his dresser, looking for, I don't know what. Evidence? Proof that my suspicions were justified? Or maybe just reassurance that I was being paranoid. What I found in his sock drawer made my blood run cold. A receipt from a restaurant I'd never been to. Dated 3 weeks ago, right around the time he'd started being more affectionate with me. Dinner for two at an upscale steakhouse downtown. The total was $180, way more than Marcus would ever spend on a casual meal with coworkers. But here's what really got me. The timestamp showed 2:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. Marcus had told me he was working late that day. I remembered because I'd had to pick up Caleb from aftercare alone. My hands were shaking as I took a picture of the receipt with my phone. One piece of evidence. But evidence of what exactly? I kept searching. In his gym bag, I found another receipt, this one from a lingerie store. Victoria's Secret. Purchased 2 days after the restaurant receipt. A red lace bra and matching panties, size 34C. I'm a 36B. Always have been. That's when I knew. That cold, sick feeling in my stomach wasn't paranoia. It was truth trying to claw its way to the surface. I spent the rest of that weekend in a strange state of hyper-awareness. Every phone call Marcus took, every text that made him smile, every excuse to leave the house, I cataloged it all. I watched him like I was studying a fascinating but dangerous species of animal. And Marcus, bless his cheating heart, had no idea he was being watched. On Monday, while he was at work and Caleb was at school, I made a decision that would change everything. I went to his laptop. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not proud of what I did next. Under normal circumstances, I would never violate someone's privacy like this. But these weren't normal circumstances. My marriage was falling apart, my future was uncertain, and my intuition was screaming that there was more to this story than Marcus was telling me. His laptop was password protected, but I knew Marcus well enough to guess it. Caleb 2016, the year our son was born. Some people never change their passwords, and fortunately for me, Marcus was one of them. What I found in his email and text messages was like reading a fictional story about my own life. Except in this version, I was the villain and some woman named Keisha was the heroine. The messages went back 6 months. 6 months of I miss you and I can't wait to see you and my wife doesn't understand me. 6 months of planning secret meetups, discussing their future together, and complaining about how trapped he felt in our marriage. But here's the part that made me see red. The messages from the past 3 weeks, right after I'd told him about the inheritance. Baby, you won't believe what happened. One text read. Z inherited over $1 million from her dad. This changes everything. Keisha's response. OMG, really? What are you going to do? Marcus, working on it. Might accelerate our timeline. If I play this right, I can get my share and we can start our life together sooner than we thought. I had to read that message 3 times before it sank in. My husband wasn't just cheating on me. He was planning to take half of my inheritance and run off with his mistress. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the alternative was screaming and I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. I screenshot every message, every email, every piece of evidence I could find. Then I started digging deeper. Keisha wasn't just some random woman. She was someone I knew. Someone I'd welcomed into my home. Someone I'd cooked dinner for. Someone I'd considered a friend. Keisha Johnson. Marcus's coworker from his marketing firm. The same Keisha who'd been to our barbecues, who'd met my son, who'd hugged me at my father's funeral and told me how sorry she was for my loss. The same Keisha who was apparently planning to console my husband right out of his marriage and into her bed. As I sat there in my kitchen, surrounded by printed screenshots and receipts, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. The confusion, the self-doubt, the wondering what I'd done wrong, all of that evaporated. This wasn't about me not being enough. This was about Marcus being a liar and a cheat who saw my inheritance as his lottery ticket to a new life. But here's what Marcus didn't know about me, what he'd apparently forgotten during our years of comfortable domesticity. I didn't get my father's money. I got his backbone too. And I was about to use both. That night, I didn't confront Marcus. I didn't scream, didn't throw his belongings out the window, didn't do any of the dramatic things you see in movies. Instead, I cooked his favorite dinner, helped Caleb with his homework, and acted like the perfect wife and mother. Because I was planning. The next morning, after Marcus left for work or to see Keisha, who knew any more, I made 3 very important phone calls. First, I called my father's lawyer, David Richardson. I explained my situation carefully, professionally, and asked about asset protection in case of divorce proceedings. David had handled my father's business for 20 years, and he knew our family well. He also knew my father would roll over in his grave if Marcus got even a penny of money intended to secure his daughter's future. Zuri, David said, I need you to listen very carefully. In Georgia, inheritance received during marriage can be considered separate property, but only if it's kept separate. If you've commingled those funds with marital assets, it becomes much more complicated. My heart sank. I'd already deposited the inheritance check into our joint savings account. However, David continued, there are legal ways to protect those assets, especially if you can prove the inheritance was intended specifically for you and your son's future. Can you come in today? My second call was to my best friend Maya, who worked as a private investigator. Maya and I had been friends since high school, and she'd always been the practical one, the one who saw through people's BS when I was still giving them the benefit of the doubt. Girl, I wondered when you were going to call me about this, Maya said when I told her what I'd discovered. You knew. I suspected. Marcus has been acting different when I've seen him around town. Different cologne, new clothes, that look men get when they're getting attention from someone new. I didn't want to say anything without proof, but I need you to help me get that proof, I said. Official proof. The kind that holds up in court. My third call was the hardest one. I called my mother. My mama, Patricia Johnson, no relation to the homewrecker Keisha, thank God, was a retired school principal and one of the strongest women I'd ever known. She'd been married to my father for 35 years before he passed, and she loved him fiercely. But she was also pragmatic and protective, especially when it came to her only daughter. Baby, she said after I'd explained everything, I'm sorry this is happening to you. But I'm not surprised. That boy never deserved you, and he sure as hell doesn't deserve your daddy's money. Mama, what should I do? What would your father do? I knew the answer immediately. My father would protect his family and his legacy, no matter what it took. By the end of that week, I had assembled what I liked to think of as my war council. David was handling the legal aspects, working to establish a trust that would protect the inheritance and ensure Caleb's future security. Maya was gathering evidence, photos, witness statements, documentation of Marcus and Keisha's affair that would hold up in divorce proceedings. And I was learning to be someone I'd never been before, strategic, calculating, and utterly focused on winning. The hardest part was continuing to act normal at home. Marcus was still playing the role of the husband who wanted an amicable divorce, still treating me with that distant politeness that made my skin crawl. Keisha even had the audacity to text me, asking how I was holding up after Marcus had told her about our separation. I'm managing, I texted back. Thanks for checking on me. If only she knew that I was managing her right out of my husband's life and my money. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later. Maya had been following Marcus and documenting his meetings with Keisha. She'd gotten photos of them at restaurants, holding hands, kissing in his car. Standard cheating husband evidence. But then she hit the jackpot. Zuri, you need to hear this, Maya said, calling me while I was at work. I got them on audio. Maya had followed Marcus and Keisha to a coffee shop downtown, where they'd sat outside on the patio discussing their plans. With a high-quality recording device and the ability to read lips, Maya had captured their entire conversation. In that recording, Marcus laid out his strategy in detail. He planned to file for divorce, claimed that the inheritance was marital property since it had been deposited in our joint account, and walk away with at least $500,000. He and Keisha had already looked at condos in Miami, where they planned to start their new life together. The best part, Marcus's voice said clearly on the recording, is that Zuri's so naive, she has no idea what's coming. She still thinks this is about our relationship problems. She has no clue about us. Keisha's laughter was audible on the tape. Poor thing. She actually thought you were trying to work on your marriage when you were just buying time to figure out the money situation. Exactly. She's always been too trusting. It's going to make this so much easier. When Maya played me that recording, I sat in my car outside my office building and cried. Not just from hurt, but from rage. Pure, clean, righteous anger. They thought I was naive. They thought I was too trusting. They thought I was easy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I chose my moment carefully. It was a Friday evening in November, exactly 6 weeks after Marcus had asked for a divorce. Caleb was spending the night at my mother's house, giving us privacy for what I knew would be an explosive conversation. Marcus came home from work, or from Keisha, I no longer cared which, around 6 p.m., expecting his usual distant but polite wife. Instead, he found me sitting at our dining room table with a manila folder, a laptop, and an expression he'd never seen before. "Hey," he said cautiously. "Everything okay? Sit down, Marcus. We need to talk." Something in my tone made him comply immediately. He sat across from me, and I could see the wariness in his eyes. "I know about Keisha," I said simply. The color drained from his face. "Zuri, I know about the restaurant receipts, the lingerie, the 6 months of text messages, and your plan to take half of my inheritance to fund your new life in Miami." Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in our entire relationship, he was speechless. I opened the laptop and turned it toward him. The screen showed screenshots of his messages with Keisha, time-stamped and organized chronologically. "I also know that you've been calling me naive and trusting behind my back. That you've been laughing about how easy it's going to be to manipulate me during our divorce proceedings." I pressed play on Maya's recording. Marcus's own voice filled our dining room. "She's always been too trusting. It's going to make this so much easier." His face went from pale to green. "Zuri, let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been planning to steal from me and my son. How you've been sleeping with my friend. How you've been lying to my face for months while I tried to save our marriage." I stood up and opened the manila folder. Inside were copies of all the legal documents David had prepared, the trust protecting my inheritance, the custody papers, and the divorce filing that would be submitted on Monday morning. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You're going to pack your things and leave this house tonight. You're going to move in with Keisha, since that's obviously where you'd rather be. And you're going to discover that my inheritance is completely protected from your grasping hands." Marcus finally found his voice. "You can't do this. That money came while we were married. It's community property." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "That's where you're wrong. My father's lawyer was very thorough in how he structured my inheritance. It's in a trust now, with Caleb as the beneficiary and me as the trustee. You can't touch it. I'll fight this in court." "With what money? And with what evidence?" "Because I have recordings of you planning to defraud me, photographs of your affair, and documented proof that you've been lying to me for months. Do you really want all of that to become public record?" The fight went out of him all at once. Marcus slumped in his chair, finally understanding that he'd been outplayed. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "Long enough to protect myself and my son. Long enough to realize that the man I married doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. That was 8 months ago. The divorce is final now, and I got everything I asked for: full custody of Caleb, the house, and most importantly, complete protection of my inheritance." Marcus and Keisha did move to Miami, though not with the windfall they'd been planning on. Last I heard, they were struggling to make ends meet on just his salary, and the stress was already causing problems in their perfect relationship. Turns out relationships built on deception and greed aren't as solid as they thought. As for me, I'm thriving. I used part of my inheritance to start my own marketing consultancy, and it's already more successful than I ever imagined. Caleb is happy and well-adjusted, spending alternate weekends with his father, but secure in his primary home with me. Most importantly, I learned something about myself that I never knew before. I'm stronger than I ever imagined. When pushed to the wall, when everything I cared about was threatened, I didn't crumble. I strategized. I fought back. I won. To anyone watching this who might be going through something similar, let me tell you something. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Protect yourself and your children. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for being smart, for being strategic, for refusing to be a victim. My father left me more than money. He left me the tools to build a better life and the backbone to fight for it when someone tried to take it away. They thought they were dealing with a naive, trusting woman who would roll over and let them steal her future. Instead, they met a woman who learned how to fight back. And trust me, that's a lesson they'll never forget. If this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or inspiration or just plain satisfaction, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of women who refuse to be victims. Share your own stories in the comments. I read every single one, and your strength inspires me every day. Remember, you're stronger than you know, smarter than they think, and more valuable than they'll ever deserve. Until next time, this is Zuri, reminding you that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be defeated.